Okay, we are here at Stansbury Park in College Park North to kind of kick off our series meeting the candidates for this year's Los Alamitos City Council election. Right now I'm here with Warren Kusumoto, former mayor, incumbent. Now this will be the third time you're running for office?
That is correct, Larry.
So why the desire for this punishment?
Oh, I think I would like to serve the community again. If they would have me, I would ask for their vote. But you know, there's things that we've made in terms of decisions to stand up for the citizens here, and I enjoy serving.
What would probably be the biggest issue you think facing Los Alamitos right now?
The biggest issue, I think, is every city. It's the pension, the unfunded pension liability that we are just continuing to push down the road for future generations to have to deal with.
You and I have talked in the past about sustainability. That's a big issue for Los Alamitos. A revenue source that's continuing, not having to reinvent that source every time. Sure. What are some of those that you think are important for Los Al?
Well, I think besides raising revenues, I think the one thing we have to look at is who is actually paying for it, because ultimately, no matter what happens, the taxes that get raised or fees that get raised are on the backs of the residents, the consumers, the stakeholders here. So the money doesn't come from nowhere, it comes from somebody's pocket. And I think that's what we always kind of have to bear in mind, and I'm not sure the city staff will always do that it's somebody else's money that we have to somehow get and then run the city and comply with all the rules, regulations, and laws.
A big thing for Los Alamitos and all cities are state mandates. Unfunded state mandates. What are some of those that particularly affect Los Alamitos?
Well, the unfunded mandates, the state is very clever. They phrase things in a way that if there is an unfunded mandate, then we would go seek reimbursement. But the laws that they pass, they will typically state that they are not mandates, and therefore, if they were, they would fall under the unfunded mandate clause of the law, and we would seek reimbursement. So the regulations that come forth that we must somehow figure out how to comply with and be, I guess, right with the law, as it were.
You talked also in the past, we've talked about the unfunded mandates are part of the bigger issue of state overreach.
So yes, so that's the other part of the state. So not only do they want to impose requirements upon cities, counties, and other municipal agencies, but they do it in a way that it takes away local control over our municipal affairs. And one of them that came up would be the accessory dwelling unit, where we are powerless to regulate some of those accessory dwelling units. Maybe a few we could.
Explain that kind of a little more in detail.
Okay.
When you said this.
So the state is recognized there's a housing shortage, and so they're going to allow to legalize the so-called granny flats that might exist in somebody's backyard. That can actually now be a dwelling structure that someone can actually rent or own and live there. And the state has eliminated any type of parking requirement. So if you think you have bad parking situation now, if you have multiple dwelling units, accessory dwelling units in a neighborhood, they could double the parking that's on the street.
Getting into the whole state overreach thing, that led to probably one of the things you're most controversial this year, certainly got headlines for, opting out. That was an example
of the California Values Act, also known as the Sanctuary State Law. So yes, that law, the way as I've researched it, and I know some of my colleagues may disagree that we shouldn't be in this fight, but this is certainly an example of state overreach where they've come in and they've told us what we can and can't do. And it's not only just the municipalities, but private employers cannot cooperate with the INS or the ICE if they have a workforce that does business with the government, and the government wants to audit their workforce to ensure everyone is a U.S. citizen or whatever the records or the requirements require. And again, if we or a private business owner were to cooperate, they would be subject to prosecution from the state of California for violating the California Values Act. It's strictly just a crazy overreach.
And that in Los Alamitos is probably the bigger issue with the employers than it is with, because for the record, it's like there hadn't been an ICE raid in this area for like at least 8 years, according to the police chiefs, correct?
I think it's even further back than that. I know there was somebody who said it was something recent and some raids, and I did my research and I've asked the chief, and I don't know, he doesn't know of any on record in his memory, and I don't know about the former chief if we had any records, any knowledge of those kinds of raids. So, yeah, our city being impacted by such an INS ICE sweep of any type is probably very minimal to almost like not going to happen. But I think this example, the overreach of the state that commandeers what we can do in terms of local control over our municipal affairs, meaning our police, that we taxpayers fund that. We derive revenues and make the expenditures, the appropriations to our police force. Who is the state to tell us what we can and can't do in cooperation with any other agency? And that's the overreach from the state.
Obviously, ramifications from that. How does a city like Los Alamitos, and there's probably some other small cities in the same situation, how far can you push it and still be fiscally responsible to your constituency?
Okay, so when you say that the state of California filed a lawsuit against the city, is that what you're kind of...
Yes, okay. Starting with that one, yeah.
So that is really a curious question, Larry. To my knowledge, the Attorney General, Becerra, for the state of California, has not served us with any kind of notice, any kind of letter that says we've done something that violates California law.
So it's only the ACLU at this point?
Only the ACLU and a citizen here, which the citizen has the right to seek redress. It's a writ of mandate that he's seeking, which is not a criminal charge. It is certainly a civil charge. And he may or may not prevail. We may or may not prevail. But it is, I guess the thing is, where is the state, the top police, the top prosecutor in the state, where is he with respect to Los Alamitos? It is silent. So I maintain what we've done has not been violation of the state law. Otherwise, we would have a letter that says we should change this ordinance to comply with state law. So we'll see what happens. But it's been very interesting. It's been silence from the state. Now, with your question on the cost, so I guess to the voters out there, at what cost do we want to have local control? And like I've said, I think from the dais and at the chamber breakfasts, if we're not going to assert local control, if you don't vote us in to be your voice, to be your fighter, and we really want to just comply with whatever the state mandates and regulates and requires of us as a city, then why do you want to have a council? Why do we want to have the added expense of a city council or even a city manager and staff when we can just hire some people that says, what does the state want us to do? And we become not a ward of the county at that point. We become a ward of the state, and they can tell us what we can and can't do, what kind of housing density we should have, whether our zoning is correct for the areas that we want. So again, local control. If we want to give that all up, then why that's the fight.
So going back to, you mentioned the pensions right away, obviously a big thing. What specifically are the ones that Los Alamitos is facing? The
pension crisis?
Yeah.
So kicking the can down the road, we're paying for a hidden workforce that is the retirees. As we take on new employees, we're going to build up again a future obligation to pay those as a hidden workforce. So at some point in time, we'll probably be paying half of our payroll will be going towards retirement, and the other half will be towards active city employees. So that part, we need to figure out what's the right way to reform that.
How close are we right now to that situation?
Oh, not that close.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a matter of time.
But is there a trajectory that's been proposed, like say by 2024, 2022, or what?
I've seen the trajectory in terms of payouts of the pension, but how it would be a function of paid staff, I do not know. That's a future question of how much staff do we have and what's that payroll going to be. But for instance, the city of Santa Ana, before they became a member of the Orange County Fire Authority, they were paying, I think, 30 or 40% of their firefighting or their emergency response was being paid towards retirees.
Well,
yeah, I know of that part of their budget. So it's a matter of time, folks.
Well, pensions, they're not the only problem Los Al's facing. You got another one's kind of reared its head again, Cypress, the expansion over there of the homes.
Okay.
I know at the city council meeting last week, you had a resident, Rob Feldman, got up and he was mentioning he'd been to a meeting over there where basically, in effect, he said that the builders were telling residents, don't worry about it. Los Al will comply with whatever we want to do down the road. That wasn't the term he used, but
yeah, I guess roll over. But so I think the thing that the member of the community was referring to is a commercial development that Cypress has had the entitlement for that for a while, as I understand it. What that got caught up into is the redevelopment agency dissolution. So
and we're talking about particularly the 13 acres that are between Costco and the entrance to the racetrack.
Yes, right. So that was always an entitlement that not always. A recent entitlement they had as a redevelopment agency. The money was pulled back by Sacramento, again, overreached by the state or controlled by the state to think that they can better use the money instead of local control. And now they are finally getting to a point where they can have it developed, and perhaps it's profitable for some developer to go out and do that. So the entitlements are already there. The road trips, again, part of the entitlement, are already there. So that has been studied. I don't know that there's any way we can resist or fight that. I think the battle probably should have been fought some years ago by a prior council. Maybe it was, and I guess for that development, it's perhaps just a done deal, and it's just a matter of what it is, and as long as it's compliant with the entitlements that they received, the CEQA that was approved. Now, I think the thing that you're referring to is the racetrack property that was just passed by a popular vote of the Cypress residents. That one is a future state that we'll have to just keep an eye on, and we'll have to see. Because again, you look at what are the impacts to the infrastructure. I know one of the former council members from Cypress was worried about the sewer lines. Will they handle the extra increase of whatever it is, businesses, industrial, commercial, or residential? So those things have to be looked at, and those will be an impact. So I hope that doesn't impact us terribly negatively, but if there's streets that are torn up for larger pipes to be put in, that's just the reality. And I think, again, it'll be back to the entitlements that they'll be able to get for car trips along Catella, which we already know is a parking lot between 3 in the afternoon and 6 o'clock in the evening. But I think the thing is, there will be inconvenience. How it gets compensated or repaid or appropriated, that's certainly something that'll be subject to negotiation at a future date.
All right, go from one busy boulevard to the next. We got Los Al Boulevard, the improvements.
Okay.
What's your viewpoint on what's happened, what should happen, what might happen?
So the boulevard, the improvement, I had resisted that for several years, and I think now that we had refinanced the park and had actually had to use that money in a way which was really fortuitous, it looks nice. So I think it's a first step in probably a many-step process. And I know one of the things that I had chatted with the chamber, the current president of the chamber, is if we were to look at a special assessment district, that can we derive some kind of funds, which will again be on the pocketbooks of the consumers, but to actually put into that area for the improvement of that area as a corridor, as a business entity. So that would be something, it would be an interesting conversation to have, and let's see if there's a will for it from both the council and the city, as well as private industry along the boulevard.
What's your feeling towards the 3-lane, 2-lane issue?
I'm kind of mixed. I like the 3 lanes, but as I drive it more and more, I see that they become somewhat a challenge to safety because of the proximity to parked cars. So I don't know that I subscribe to the theory that 2 lanes will be slower, but I guess it was always designed to be 2 lanes. The studies show that the traffic the car trips that we need to support will be handled by 2 lanes. So the 2 lanes are what we're going to get eventually.
And it would still be 3 lanes north of Sausalito to the high school like it always was, and 3 lanes up to Florista, I imagine.
Yep.
So just that area where in the middle there.
Yeah.
A little question, and I can't read, but relationships with the school district.
Okay.
What's working? What do you think can work better?
The relationships. I think the thing with relation with the school district is that we have to recognize and I guess our jurisdiction, our charter, if you will. So I certainly try to make sure decisions that I make, any votes that I make, are consistent with not overreaching or overstepping to their business. That's the last thing I want to do, because it's not good governance. Now, from a relationship between, I say our electeds and the school board electeds, I think they're really good. They shouldn't be too cozy, because we have separate constituents that we have to answer to. The footprint of the school district is far bigger than our city, but again, from a standpoint of our city, we have 4 schools within the school district's footprint as well. So
by far the most students, because of between 3,000 Los Al and another 3,000 at the 2 middle schools. So that's 2/3 of the district.
So when you look at I guess a Monday through Friday during the school year, the population of our city that we have to keep safe increases, from the outlying areas.
Almost doubles from what I've been told when you count the teachers who come in and the students, and the parents. So, where's the room for improvement, do you think?
With the school district?
Yeah.
Probably more communication probably would be better. And then I think, we do on occasion have ad hoc committees in which we'll meet with 2 of their electeds and 2 of ours, and those have been pretty fruitful in some ways. Now, I think part of it is, though, is to understand, if there is a desire for some kind of initiative, and I'll pick on one, the Safe Routes to School. We, by the rules as I understand it, the city is not should not be the agency that requests Safe Route to Schools grant funding. It has to really be the school. And we have been prepared to support them, but it really becomes, I think, more of a, not even a school board issue, but a grassroots issue from the members of the public. So if they want to do that, we'll certainly be there to support. The school board, I know, is ready to support it, but there's got to be someone else, because you don't want your government driving some of these things. You want the people that are closest to it, and we're there to help. And I know that's one thing that we've talked about, but it's just a matter of the right neighborhood community nonprofit that takes charge, and we'll be there to support them. But with respect to our relationship with the school, I think it's been a lot better than it has been during some of the 8 years that I've served.
The other big neighbor, big brother that Los Al has is the base. Mm-hmm. How has the relationship been going lately, and where can that get better?
Okay, so the base is an interesting entity, because the command structure rotates on the order of every 2 years. So the base commander, or the general that we had, actually he was deployed, but he probably has only another, I don't know how long to serve, but that'll rotate, and there'll be another commander. So getting those relationships is I think, not as permanent as we would like to see, but I know we have touch points with them through some of our electeds and some of our members of the community. And it'd be nice to keep those kind of relationships strong and constant. But we'll have to see. I know it's been rather difficult at recent times. Race on the base, 4th of July. Part of it is their JAG, which is their lawyer. Basically, I guess would be the equivalent of our city attorney. Looking at rules and regulations, kind of interpreted some of the things that we were able to do in the past. He said that those are things that we can't do, so it made it a little bit difficult, but challenging at times. But I think the relationship is, it's okay, and it could be better.
My last question is campaigning. What are the good things about campaigning, and what are the things you really don't like?
I think the good things are talking to people. Now,
do you actually go out and walk door to door a lot, or not?
I haven't done it this year yet, but yes, but it's that opportunity to hear people's perspectives, grievances, both good and bad. That are we doing the right thing? And I think although we have term limits here, but one former council member said the best term limits is the ballot box. So it's to make sure people are we're taking care of them. And if things are going good, that's great. People don't really typically have to pay a whole lot of attention. And if they're not, then they want to watch and they want to have a grievance. They certainly should air it at the council meeting, via email, via face-to-face, however they want to do that. So that's, I think, a good part of campaigning, getting to meet the people and hear their concerns. And it's perhaps a calibration checkpoint for me, is that am I really kind of representing and speaking up for the people and their concerns? And if I'm not, certainly maybe I'm not the right person for this position, and I'll have to do some inward soul searching for that. But by and large, I believe that I'm doing what the people want. I want to serve, but I want to serve in the way that's consistent with my values as well. So we'll see how that goes.
I fibbed when I said this was my final question, because I realized I overlooked one, and that was, and I think part of it gets to the neighborhood walking in, the redistricting issue, which came up.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think this is the California Voter Rights Act that we have to comply with, and so a lawyer figured out there's perhaps every city in the state will have to comply with this, and he can just simply sue us into submission. And the problem with that is that even if we were to fight him and win, he can refile the next day. There's no precedence that gets set, or someone else can take his exact same lawsuit and refile that. So I think the districting is a very bad disservice to our city because of our size and how we've tried to slice it up into roughly equal districts. And the main thing with that is to make sure that the ethnic makeup of a district will have a certain population of, I'll say, ethnically similar people. So it's really, again, the purpose of what they're trying to do, I understand, but is this the right way to do it? And it almost makes it like a quota system. So we had to carve out districts, and again, we had to look at at least one that had a certain the highest representation of a certain ethnic minority that we could, and we have something that looks pretty interesting. But it's going to be interesting to see in 2020 when these go into effect. We'll have 2 seats up, 2 districts up, and depending on this coming election and how we get elected and where we reside, it really doesn't become fully into effect until 2022, when we'll have all districts that have voted, and then whoever is maybe overlapping districts will end up not being there. So,
all right, your final chance to speak to the voters.
Oh, I just want to say it's been really an honor and a privilege to serve, and I hope that you've recognized that I have been serving. I don't seek, certainly I don't want to seek fame. I don't want to seek higher office. I want to be here to add at least my thoughts, my problem-solving abilities, and my clarity of how I think to the decisions that we're making every day when we're out there voting and representing you. And of course, if I'm not representing you, that's again, bring that to the ballot box, and it'll elect the best person that's going to represent you, our city, your values, and what you want us to do for you. Because we're here to try and fend off some of the craziness that's going around outside of this city. There's only so much we can do. We don't have limitless resources, so we have to make decisions, we have to make choices. But we've been in a very good position financially and even staff-wise, based on what prior councils have done. I know I've been looking down the road for future councils to make sure that we're not going to hinder them or fetter them in any way that makes their decisions for the betterment of us and our community. If it makes our decisions make their decisions more difficult, that's not what we want to do. We're looking down the road to make sure that our children and our grandchildren that live here, that love Los Alamitos like I do, like everyone on the council does, that we're there for them as well as for you here and now. But I wish for that I ask for your vote, but please vote for the best candidate that you believe is going to be representing you, your city, and our community. Thank you very much.